So I'm going to call us to order at 5:09. And we'll go ahead and take roll. Terry Andrews.
Here.
Ira Wachowski here. Betsy Kahn, I'm here. Gwen Hoppight and Amanda. Before we get started, we have a lot of public comment lined up, and I'm very, very grateful for that. For those of you who haven't been here doing public comment, I just wanted to make sure you know how the process goes so you won't be surprised. I have the requests all queued up in order according to their agenda numbers, and when it's your turn, I'll call you and you can step to the podium. I stopped at Alpine Hardware on my way here and bought a little timer. I have my own, of course. I have my cell phone here, but I know that when you're speaking, it's hard to know how much time you have left. And I don't want to surprise you when your time is almost up. So I invite you, if you would like to, it's quite simple to use, just push start. We'll say ready, set, go. And I'll push mine too. And that way you'll be able to say the 3 minutes worth of most important stuff you want to say before I have to tell you your time is up. And I apologize in advance because I'm probably going to cut some of you off before you're really finished. But we have a whole lot of people who need to be heard, and in the interest of running this efficiently and not having it go unbearably long, I'm going to ask your help in stopping when it's time to stop. So I'm going to put this on the podium.
Thank you, by the way. Oh, you're welcome. That's $11. We could all chip in. I had a hat. Okay.
Second thing before we begin, I just wanted to introduce Anthony Green, who's sitting on the side, our esteemed colleague and staff member who many of you know. We asked him to come tonight just to kind of help us keep ourselves in order. And so I'm sure that was an overabundance of caution, but I just wanted you to know that that's the reason why. So, that's it. Up to item 3. Item 3 is board president comment and report, and not quite sure why, but a couple of people have something to say about that. So I'm going to go ahead and call you. Mark, go ahead.
Mark Marisky, I just want to say.
Sorry, hold on. You going to push start? No, okay.
I just want to say that I'm glad you're president, and I know there's some issues, and I'm assuming Ruben's going to clear it up, or somehow there's going to be something here during your speech, but I'm just glad you're president of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Mark.
Me too. Me too.
Mr. Garmeyer, I believe you also wanted to speak to this.
Well, I don't know what you're going to say, so I want to talk after you speak about the items. I don't know how you expect me to speak.
I didn't. That's why I was surprised to see it on the
Yeah.
list of numbers, but
It's a Brown Act item, I'm entitled to talk on it, but I can't talk on a black box, I don't know what the answer is.
well, our process, as you know, is to take public comment before an item, so if you would like to consider what I say and then talk about it at the general comment section,
I
you're
believe
perfectly
I'm
welcome
entitled
to.
to talk about it after you speak, and I intend to do that. If you're going to have me arrested, you better be prepared to do it.
Mr.
Oh,
Simon,
come on.
is it perfectly fine?
You can speak.
He can speak after, okay. Okay, then I guess, okay. I'd rather not. I'd rather not. Okay. In that case, I guess it's my turn. If you have a comment, ma'am, you want to just bring it up and I'll put it in the queue. Oh, you know, there's something else I wanted to say about comments. Thank you for coming, everybody. It's possible that this meeting is going to go for a long time. And some of you who have signed up for public comment might be concerned that we go into closed session and you aren't going to know, and neither will we know when we're going to come out. And so before we get to the end of public comment, the general public comment, I'm going to ask if any of you who signed up to speak to items that are later on the agenda would just like to make your comments during the general public comment, I will invite you to do that just because we just don't know how this is gonna go. Okay, so just do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we put a chair outside for people who can't stand during closed session?
Yes. we will.
Just take a
Thank you.
chair outside?
Yes.
Thanks.
Jonathan, would you, make sure that when we go into closed session, there's some chairs out in the lobby?
Done.
Thank you. Okay. If you look around you, you will see that we are so crowded in here that there's hardly space enough for us and all the elephants that are in this room. As president of this board, I apologize to you that we are not at liberty to discuss many of these issues in public because of legal and employee confidentiality rules that prevent us from doing so. But there is one elephant that I am allowed and compelled to comment on, and that is the question of whether I have the right to be sitting in this chair. For those of you who might not know, Dale Gronemeyer, Director Mindy Katay's attorney, published a piece last week in the online news outlet known as Pasadena Now. The headline reads, "Guest Opinion. Is the Altadena Library Board of Trustees President holding office illegally?" Using documents he obtained through a Public Records Act request, Mr. Gronemeyer's piece reproduced in part some email correspondence between myself and former board president John McDonald, in which I requested clarification about the process of my appointment to the board on March 7th. Upon my appointment, I immediately began studying the provisions of the open meeting laws, known as the Brown Act. And in doing so, I read some materials that caused me to question whether it was legal to make a board appointment without revealing the individual votes of each board member in each round of voting. To be clear, the votes were recorded at the time, were released within a few days of a public records request response, and shortly thereafter appeared on social media, as well as being reported in the minutes of that meeting. So who voted for whom that night is and has been in the public domain for quite some time. To reiterate here, the Board of Trustees interviewed 9 candidates and voted by written ballot over 4 rounds as follows. John McDonald voted for Dave Herman in the first round and for me in the last 3 rounds. Ira Brashovsky voted for Dave Herman in the first 3 rounds and for me in the final round. Gwen McMullins voted for me in all 4 rounds. And Armando Zambrano voted for Mr. Svedich in all 4 rounds. Contrary to Mr. Gronemeyer's assertions in his piece, John McDonald responded swiftly and effectively to my concerns, and at my request, immediately arranged for a conference call among ourselves and 2 attorneys from the county counsel's office. During that discussion, our county counsel confirmed that Mr. McDonald had consulted with her before that March 7th meeting and had been assured that the process he was planning to follow was legal. She asked me if anyone had challenged my appointment, to which I replied that I myself was challenging it because I wanted to be certain that it was legitimate. The supervising attorney offered to double-check their opinion with the county's in-house Brown Act expert, which she did the very next day. That attorney concurred with the opinion of the 2 attorneys we talked to, which completely allayed my concerns and enabled me to withdraw my request that a second vote be taken at the next meeting. So let me be perfectly clear. My appointment is legal, and this board acted on the advice of county counsel. Mr. Gronemeyer originally distributed his comments to the press in the form of a press release. Reporters from 2 other news outlets contacted me for comment in accordance with professional journalistic practice. According to the provisions of our bylaws, I referred these inquiries to Acting Director Ryan Roy, who was able to provide them with these essential facts that were missing from the piece published on the Pasadena Now website. In a subsequent Pasadena Star News article published last Friday, one of the reporters who bothered to ask did include this vital information, and Mr. Gronemeyer is quoted as saying that he doesn't believe that our county council would give such advice. Well, she did. Her supervising attorney did, and their in-house expert did. I know, and John McDonald knows, because we were the ones who were on the phone with them. You do not have to have worked for over 15 years in middle schools, as I have, to recognize bullying behavior when you see it. It is a classic bullying technique to selectively use incomplete and erroneous information to create a false narrative in the public's minds. Even 11-year-olds can do this with great skill and finesse. The difference here is the audience. Trust me, this situation is not easy to figure out. And what has actually happened here is not obvious. Anytime you hear a story that is almost completely black and white, right or wrong, good or evil, you can be pretty sure that there are parts of the story that you don't know. So, I fully trust you, the adult public, to observe, analyze, and make up your own minds about whom to believe and what to believe when you consider what is happening in this library, which we Altadenians truly love. Or none of us would be here right now, sitting in this room with all of these elephants. Thank you. Mr. Gronemeyer, would you like to speak? Are you going to use my timer? Mr. Gronemeyer, would you like to use the timer just? Pardon me?
I will.
Thank you. Is there something to say? We can't have that.
It's going up. Oh, I keep track.
So everybody, this kind of big gray button on the right, that's the one.
I'll start you over, don't worry.
Thank you. President Khan and trustees, first of all, I want to commend President Khan for forthrightly and publicly waiving the attorney-client privilege and publicly communicating facts that were not available to me when I prepared the op-ed that I wrote and put out the press release. In fact, what I relied upon was the only information that is available because I've asked for more information, and most of it is in the hands of the library, but has been redacted and has not been available to me. And in fact, what I used was the only information I had from the pen or the fingers of Director Catay, Trustee Catay, who provided all of the information that I put into public record. And the fact that she had subsequently met with attorneys from the City County Counsel's office and been reassured was something that was not known, notwithstanding that I had asked for any records that might have shown it. I would also say that if we're going to talk about omitting information, I would have appreciated that President Khan would have indicated that I, at the beginning of my article, said that if she holds office illegally, it is not for any fault of her own, because she did raise the issue and seek advice. And what she quoted was information from the Brown Act that says you cannot vote anonymously, you cannot vote in secret. And that's what led her to be concerned about it. I have just served you all, and Mr. Higginbottom has distributed the copies that we have, a document that is a demand and a cease and desist request, which is the precondition to going to court. Ultimately, the court will determine whether or not the practice that was followed violates the Brown Act. I believe a court will find that you cannot secretly and anonymously vote in the meeting and then try to cure that afterwards. There's never been a vote that selected Trustee Catay. So the document that I've served upon you gives you an opportunity to correct that and have a revote, but there has not been a revote. And until there is, it remains an open question. And I'm not bullying, I'm simply putting out information I got from Trustee Khan. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind being a timer monitor? But I do want it to be in front of people. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garner. Mark, did you want to speak to this? Oh, wait, you already did. Okay. So then I guess we're going to item 4. Mr. Garner, you listed as wanting to speak to item 4 as well?
I want to speak afterwards, yes, but I don't know what he's going to say.
Shall I address the board from the podium or from the chair?
Yes, please.
I think I'm going to sit here and let you take.
Okay. Green light.
How do I know if it's on? Green light.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Before I start, just for the sake of a complete and accurate record, there were a couple of times when Mr. Gronemeyer referenced Director Catay or President Catay, and I believe the reference was to President Khan. So and I saw some folks in the audience wanting to make the correction, so I wanted to put it on the record. I believe you all know what he was talking about. And I'm going to continue on the theme of the half hour, which is Brown Act issues, to which you've spoken quite eloquently, Madam President, and to which Mr. Gronemeyer just commented. And I believe that all the board members here, and by this point, everybody in the room knows that the Brown Act does not allow secret ballots. However, as you discussed, there was extensive legal advice to give you a full review of what the law provides. And so I wanted to take a few minutes to go through with the board where in the Brown Act the justification for county council's opinion was. Obviously, without having spoken to county council, I'm just telling you that as a lawyer, I can read the Brown Act the way that they did, and I can see how they came to the conclusion that they did. So, at the end of this, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So the procedures that the board followed were affirmed again, as President Khan pointed out, by legal counsel. The ballot was not secret because the tally of the board's vote was indeed read at the meeting as to who won the vote. The results of the ballot, including the voting action by each member of the board, was included in the minutes of the meeting, publicly reported as is required in the Brown Act. That's what the language in the Brown Act says. There shall be no vote by secret ballot. Each vote shall be publicly reported. That public report happened in the minutes. And then on top of that, as you discussed, Madam President, as I think we all know, there were Public Records Act requests for the ballots themselves. Those requests were responded to very quickly, within a couple of days, if I'm not mistaken, and so that information has been in the public domain, as you yourself mentioned. So for those reasons, I agree with County Council in their ultimate conclusion. Even if I didn't, though, Madam President, there is a concept in the Brown Act called substantial compliance, which essentially says, even if someone were to argue that the procedure was flawed, the Brown Act does not require perfection. Okay, again, I don't know whether we've had this conversation in the past, but the legislature realizes that we're all human beings trying to make the public's business work as best we can in front of large rooms full of people sometimes. Sometimes there are mistakes. The board's action that day to appoint President Khan is viewed through a different lens under the Brown Act, and that is under Government Code Section 54956.1, subsection D1. The action of the board cannot be invalidated if the board substantially complied with the Brown Act. So the process that you described, that I just reiterated, is that substantial compliance under the Brown Act. So all due respect to Mr. Gronemeyer, although he served his required notice, and if he ultimately files an action against the district, that will be wasted time and wasted money, because the court's going to look at what happened and say to itself, was the public deprived of the information that they were entitled to? Ultimately, the answer is no. You stated it here, it was placed in the minutes, it was publicly provided in response to the Public Records Act. And so the section of the Brown Act that prohibits secret ballots is in section 54953. That's like the whole agenda requirements, posted notice, all of that stuff. The substantial compliance relief valve specifically is mentioned specifically mentions rather that 54953. So we would argue very strongly, and I believe the court would agree with us, that the board substantially complied with the Brown Act, and any lawsuit filed on that basis would be frivolous and a waste of time. So with that, Madam President, I would ask the board to entertain a motion finding that the board complied with and substantially complied with the provisions of the Brown Act when they appointed Director Khan. Trustee Khan, excuse me.
Can I entertain such a motion?
I will, so
And a second. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, moved by Terry, seconded by Armando, that the board, help me with the wording, that the board,
Substantially complied with the Brown Act in its appointment of the Trustee Khan.
okay, so that the board confirms that it substantially complied with the Brown Act in its appointment of Trustee Khan. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed?
Just for the purposes of the Brown Act, Madam President, I will make clear on the record that each of the board members present, that is 4 of you, responded in the affirmative by raising their hands.
Thank you. Mr. Gronemeyer?
Dale Gronemeyer again. Mr. Duran makes certain arguments. I think it warrants addressing them helpful for everybody to see what records we got from our Brown Act request, because I think it will explain the very reasonableness of raising these questions. But I want to just briefly respond to Mr. Duran's thoughtful analysis. We certainly both agree that the Brown Act prohibits secret voting. And the question, what is secret voting? If trustees do not have to publicly identify how they vote, which is what happened in this instance, that's secret voting. And the whole heart of the Brown Act is to encourage the collective deliberation of a body so that the thoughts and actions of each member are known by the others, and they react and dialogue to it. So the very notion of the Brown Act is that it is important, and it's important for the deliberative process that would be fair and most open, that at the time that the voting takes place, the public and the trustees know who's voting which way. And anonymous voting, which is what took place on March 7th, is not consistent with having open, non-secret, and non-anonymous voting as required by the Brown Act. It is correct that the information that was suppressed at the time of the deliberations has subsequently been released, but it was not contemporaneously available, and that's what the Brown Act requires. You can pass a resolution, the board can pass a resolution that is self-serving and saying that the board complied with the Brown Act, but ultimately the court is going to decide that. The document but the larger picture is that the document that has been distributed, that was served upon the board, called a demand and a cease and desist, lists at least more than 35 Brown Act violations in the last 9 months. And this is just one out of more than 35. There is an elephant in the room, and it's more than 35 Brown Act violations, not just the one. Thank you. Got it? I'm learning. Okay. Thanks for educating me.
Thank you, President Kahn. There's an old expression that fools march in where angels, or rush in where angels fear to tread, and I sort of feel like this at this point. But I should point out, among other things, as posted on social media, I'm the guy who gave Dale those emails. I didn't know that I gave Dave those emails because I never bothered to read all the way through. I was simply interested in why a previously scheduled special meeting had precipitously been canceled, and I went through a couple of pages, and then everything was redacted for attorney-client privilege as far as I saw. I just didn't go all the way through the stack. My bad, because I could have addressed this months ago. That said, kudos to Mr. Duran and to some degree you all. The Brown Act, you make a mistake under the Brown Act, you can cure it and you can correct it, or you can correct it and cure that violation. You can do so in typically simply re-agendizing the issue and re-voting on that. Kind of hard when the board has changed as it has to get, votes from dead hands, so to speak. But the idea of Mr. Duran's to have this motion and this whatever it was that you folks just passed, resolution, I guess, is a very nice way to attempt to insulate the board from what may have actually been, and arguably could be seen by a court as a Brown Act violation. But again, it's important to remember, as has been said, we're all human. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes at least once every 30 years. And so it's possible to save face and get back within the law by simply taking that simple step of re-agendizing and and voting on it. And that's a cure and correct provision. And it's always better for the agency to recognize that, go, whoops, we screwed up, let's revote. It takes a little bit of humility, which can be a problem, but it's always a better way to handle it than to go to court over an issue. So thank you.
Thank you. Jerry. Go get my money back. Okay, I do believe that concludes item number 4.
Oh, I didn't see the agenda, so I what comment
On,
on my,
on this particular item, because I did include you in the general comments.
if I could just,
Go right ahead.
I don't even need 2 minutes.
Okay.
I'm on time. Okay, my name is Patricia Kung. I just want to say that I was at the meeting that night, and with all due respect, you didn't need to raise hands. Everybody knew exactly who voted for who. So you might want to get technical about that, Dale, but by the same token, I sent you both copies of my story, which clearly outlined everything the way it had. Zambrano's guy was the attorney who couldn't articulate why he was running. And Ira's guy was David Herman. It was obvious. But Ira did what was best for the library, and he voted for Betsy. And that's what I want to say. And I thank you so much, everybody, for using my elephant in the room phrase.
Thank you. Okay, now I think we're done with 4, right? Anybody else? So we have this agenda item number 5, public communication, which, okay, we're gonna take a break before we launch into number 5. But before I call this break, I just wanna say, as I did at our last special meeting, it's not required at a special meeting to have open public comment on unagendized items. We've done it before, and we're doing it now because we can if we want to, and our goal this evening is to hear as many voices as we can, and to give as many people the opportunity to speak as we can. And so with that in mind, we put that on the agenda in order to allow for that, that speech to be heard. So, just wanted to point that out. And second, once again, this is the general comment section. I'm gonna run through everybody who either said this was the agenda number they wanted to speak to, or I sort of deduced it from the topic that they wrote. When we're done with number 5, I'll ask if I missed anyone, and I will ask if anyone who has signed up to speak for agenda items later on the agenda might want to move up into the general comment, just because, again, we just don't know how long this is going to go. Okay, so it's 6:42. We'll come back at 6. Sorry, 5. There I go, making a mistake. 5:40, now it's 5:43. By 5:48, we will resume. So here we go. We have quite a few comments for section 5, and at least one person needs to leave who has asked to be moved into this section. So first I'm going to call on Lucy Molina. Lucy, do you want to use that time?
Sure.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is Lucy Molina. I'm an ex-employee of the Altamira Library District. I resigned from the district about a year and a half ago after serving for 25 years. My main reason for resigning was the director, Mindy McKay, and the way she was implementing changes here at the library, which affected myself, other staff, and the community. Many of the changes were not necessary, but they were made possible through misleading information, manipulation, threats, and outright lies both to staff and board members alike, which I believe indicates the reason why so many board members have also resigned in the past 2 years. These changes were implemented, and the director was very inappropriate and unprofessional, and she had very little value and respect for the experience in education, and that took a physical toll on me. During that time, I resigned in December of 2006. From September to December, 10 other members of this organization also resigned, which was about a third of our staff. This library has been dealt several lawsuits. The library has had to seek more legal representation. Again, I understand board members have resigned. There's been multiple special meetings, and all along, I believe that the problem has been Mindy Kate, and I believe that the solution would be for her for her contract not to be, to not continue.
Thank you. Oh, I don't think we're going to. Okay. Mindy, I believe you wanted to speak.
I'm going to address just one of the allegations that's been going on for many months, or almost a year, regarding the numerous allegations from Trustee McDonald regarding compensation of staff in the STEP system. McDonald requested of the board at the November board meeting approval to hire an independent auditor reporting to the board to review the library's financial records, processes, and procedures. As the director of the district, I oversee the finances of the district and hire both the staff and consultants that assist with those tasks. Both our auditor and independent CPA work specifically with and are specialists in independent districts. This request by McDonald was surprising as the district had just completed its annual audit and it was presented at the same November board meeting. The audit, as the 2 previous years, was a clean audit. Additionally, no member of the board, including Trustee McDonald, consulted with the auditor, CPA, staff accountant, or myself before making this request. On October 10th, I received a request from the Board of Trustees stating that they were concerned that there were inconsistencies in the application of compensation increases. The board requested a detailed report with backup prior to October 23rd at 5 p.m. 3 days later, I provided the board with a full explanation for every request, along with full documentation for each and every employee. I was informed by HR Network that they reviewed the documents and backup I provided, and that there were no anomalies or inconsistencies, and that everything was done according to policy and procedure, and that they had informed McDonald of this as well. The spreadsheet synopsizing all of the questions and the corresponding answers was also provided to the public in the November 27th board package. As verified by our CPA, our district, as almost all districts in government, use a STEP system to calculate compensation. The district has been on a STEP system for as long as anyone can remember. The current salary schedule showing the STEP system is now and has always been on the library website. It is also included in the board package as part of the final budget, and in January, if there's a minimum wage increase that affects the salary schedule. During McDonald's tenure, there appeared in his board package a salary schedule with the STEP system 4 times. Therefore, it is inconceivable to me that Trustee McDonald or any of the trustees would claim ignorance of the STEP system. Additionally, in the November 27th board package, I placed a detailed explanation with copies of every single board package page that addressed the salary schedule and included the STEP system during the past 3 years. This was after I provided the same along with detailed information about my specific compensation, including my contract, which is also on the website, and copies of each of my personnel action forms, along with the copies of board packages mentioned above, via email multiple times, and I also handed out hard copies to the board at the October board meeting. So this issue should no longer be outstanding.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hickenbottom.
I'll speak briefly about Mr. Herman's Brzezinski's been, Mr. Herman. So let's start talking about the Brown Act and start talking about the fact that this former male majority of this board has been trying for over a year to both defame and harass Ms. Catay into quitting her job. And now what they're trying to do is stonewall her until her contract runs out on June 30th and not give her a fair opportunity to renew her contract. So this board decided through various Brown Act violations in January of this year to replace Ms. Catay with Mr. Roy. And Mr. Gronemeyer is now handing out an email from Mr. Herman, from Mr. Brown to Mr. McDonald talking about Mr. Herman. And the email of January 18th around 5:15 begins by talking about that I think we need to hire an attorney to start investigating her, referring to Ms. Catay, over that issue, sharing confidential information, hiring fringe contractors without disclosure, and the sexual harassment issue. These are trumped up charges. We want to make that clear, just like Ms. Catay made clear up here. These are trumped up charges by this board majority, which has its own hidden agenda. So when Mr. Zambrano communicated to Mr. Brzezinski that he had talked to Mr. Herman, Mr. McDonald said, I know Dave, we've been in close communication. And then 4 days later, Mr. Herman came before this board, and he said that there were 11 pending lawsuits that Ms. Catay was responsible for. And you all know that's incorrect, but none of you chose to correct that. So then after Mr. McDonald quit, because of his numerous Brown Act violations, Mr. Herman, when he wasn't elected to the board, asked you, Mr. Zambrano, not to quit also, after Mr. McDonald quit. And he said, please hang in there a bit longer and see this through. 3 months and her contract will be up. But you're in a position to stonewall and let the clock run out. Just let her contract expire, we'll set up an investigation. Now that sounds like bullying to me. Stonewalling isn't good faith, and stonewalling is what these people deserve. They deserve an open, honest, and transparent process to determine who should be the director of this library. And these types of emails are why we're here, because we're defending someone who's getting bullied. And I apologize, Madam President, if you perceive what Mr. Gronemeyer said as bullying. I get that a lot as his part, that he's a bully. And I understand that, but understand what we're doing. We're standing up for Ms. Catay here, because it's Ms. Catay who's been bullied for a year by this board majority, and a lot of you have sat here and watched. And so we're not going to stop until that's wrong and right. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think we're not going to applaud people's comments. I think that's going to, thank you. All right, Jan Sanders. Thank you. For the record, if you wouldn't mind coming, Trustee McMullen arrived at.
Thank you. My name is Jan Sanders. I am a resident of the city of Pasadena and a neighbor in Altadena and a user of this library. Some 10 years ago or so, I assisted with a strategic planning process when Barbara Pearson was the library director here, and at that time we looked a lot at the involvement of the library in the community, and it was less than exemplary at that time. We had a lot of issues and a lot of problems with the use of the library and getting getting people involved in their library. During Ms. Catay's term, it appears that there has been a great deal of involvement from the community. It appears that programs have increased, that library usage is up, that the support and positive feelings about the library have soared. So I just would like to bring that to your attention in her role as library director. I bring to your attention pages 5 and 6 of the Altadena Library Annual Report, which shows a lot of the activities and events and highlights of things that this library has done effectively during the course of the year. I believe that you have a strong, active, well-functioning, and highly supported library to serve your community well. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Zach.
Good evening, board and community. My name is Michelle Zach, and I'm speaking tonight on my own behalf and also on behalf of Altadena Heritage, which is a group that has existed in the community for 30 years and that's been very involved with the library. First, I wanted to show everyone a newsletter that we wrote about the library in September 2008, What We Love About the Altadena Library, and I did want to share that with you. And I just mention that because we don't have a lot of institutions in Altadena that are here for the long run, just, public volunteer groups. So I wanted just to let everyone know that we've been involved in the library for a long time. We always had someone on the library committee, the building committee, and so forth. And I think it's very dispiriting, and a lot of us feel very confused about what's going on, because we know what we know about what's gone on here, but of course we don't know what we don't know. So I wanted just to briefly go over what we do know. And I also wanted to say that I was on the committee that helped choose the new director and the goals that were set. So we do know, in terms of the goals that Dan Sanders just referred to, that to the public it seems that a lot of the goals that have been set were reached or even exceeded in terms of community engagement, updating and refreshing the library. The library's become a community center. Bob Lucas Branch, has had improvements, maybe not as many as we'd like, but it's definitely been attended to. We also know that there's been a lot of hostile board meetings, that emails have been erased, that there's been some disrespectful language and hostility, and these are not things that have inspired confidence, especially disrespectful language in meetings. But we don't know the reasons behind the board reversing its decision to provide the director, Kate, a contract. So it becomes really difficult, because of confidentiality, for engaged members of the public to know exactly how to respond, because we know what we know, but we don't know, other than we hear, maybe the director made some mistakes, maybe she did something wrong, maybe it was terrible. But most people, having just seen everything that we do know about the changes in the library, most people doubt, that, okay, disgruntled employees leaving during a transition, that's unfortunate, but that's pretty normal. It doesn't seem to rise to the level of throwing out a director who otherwise is good, nor does it seem like a good idea for the board to get involved in a lawsuit that's going to cost us all a lot of money and more experience.
Thank you. Dave Herman.
Hello. I'm here. First of all, I want to thank you all for your dedication to the library and volunteering your own personal time to be here for the community, doing this work for us, and staying in there in spite of what we've been seeing these past several months. So I just want to thank you for that. I also would like to present you all with, let me step back. We're talking about giving a voice to the voiceless, everybody having their voice heard here. We have a number of people in the community who have come together to sign a petition. They represent current staff members, former staff members, former foundation members, current and former friends of the library, community members, the stakeholders, the people who love this library, care about this library. So I just wanted to present this set of petitions to you all, and I hope you find it useful. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay. My name is Mark Goldschmidt. I wrote that, in fact, 10 years ago when we were involved in the newsletter about saving our library, back when we were involved with Barbara Pierce and trying to talk about renovating the library. So I've been involved for a long time, and I've been a long-time user of the library. The situation is so sad. This Mindy Kute affair, cloaked in secrecy. We don't know what's going on. We've never been told. We're not allowed to hear about any personnel matters. I don't think Mindy would mind, but I guess people don't want to be up in front about it. Apparently she sinned greatly, perhaps. I don't know, or maybe not. We do know that she suffered harassment from the library board. Not so much lately, but it's all on video. So we don't know how much she harassed anybody else, but she certainly was harassed. It's been well attested to. It's really time to get beyond this kind of squabble and forgive everybody's sins, and let's just go ahead. We know that the library is completely different than the moribund library it was under Barbara Pearson. It's in every way. I can't even, it's certainly become a vibrant community center. And the community really wants to see Mindy stay because they've seen what's happened in the last 3 years. And it's just to let her go is going to lead to more lawsuits, more time spent in court, more recriminations, a lot of expenses that we, the stakeholders, really would like to see go into the library's resources and to the programs rather than to attorneys. Is it possible that we can just forgive the sins of the board, and the sins of Mindy, and the sins of everybody else, and just try to do better and make good? It seems like it's time to just, let's give it another try. Let's renew the contract. Let's move on. Let's avoid useless time spent in court, writing memos and memorandums, and generally raising everybody's blood pressure. I really think it's not too late. I think you can do it. I think the board can do it. They could just move ahead. Of course, we don't know what happened, but I just know only what I've seen, and it's been some it's been very sad to watch. And this wonderful thing that's happened in the library, to watch it just dissolve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
I'll
be quick. At the last regular meeting, Trustee McMullins did a report, and she said how excited she was and how wonderful it was to receive wonderful and great materials from BB&K, stuff she had never seen before. So, of course, I immediately did a Public Records Act request for those materials that weren't made public at the time. And I've got a copy of them. I don't have the actual, I've lent them to someone. But there's a guide on avoiding conflict of interest, the Public Records Act, the gift rules, and the Statement of Economic Interest. That's what was made public to me. There was a letter that was sent as well that, it's weird. You guys have had one major issue, right? Okay? And I hate to say it again because it's been said so many times this evening. Brown Act issues. Conspicuously missing from the materials made available to me was anything to do with the one major problem you folks have, the big elephant, the 35 elephants, however you want to call it. Maybe it's in the letter that wasn't provided to me under attorney-client privilege, but I've handed out to each of you and to some members of the public. I didn't expect to turn out like this, and thank you all for coming out. An article I found online that has to do with specifically the issues that if only it had been followed, folks had read it, and it had been followed at the time it was published, this wouldn't be an issue. And this is from, I don't know, Public CEO or something. Yeah, publicceo.com. And it goes on about how illegal it is to have back-channel secret meetings via email for public officials and board members. And I bring it specifically because you'll notice who it came from. Yes, the good, talented, and not inexpensive attorneys from BB&K, the law firm you folks have chosen to use. Now, I usually stand up here and I rail about the waste of public resources, about how money that should go into programs and materials and all the rest gets wasted on things like hiring attorneys. But I cannot stand here and not get my blood pressure up over the thought that had only people listened to Director Kittay when she was saying you're violating the Brown Act, if only someone who was involved in that chain of emails had blown the whistle at that point and stopped it, we wouldn't be here today. This man, Mr. Rubin, wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have these issues. And so I feel bad. I feel bad that I didn't find this before and bring it to your attention, because had I done so, maybe some of this garbage we're going through would no longer be the case. Thank you very much.
Elisa?
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Elisa Callow. I'm a resident of Altadena. I am the founding director of the Armory Center for the Arts and former program director of the James Irvine Foundation in the Arts. And I mention the Armory because I have been working with this beautiful library since I was its founding director, with Bill Tima, one of the library's directors. And so I say this also because my father was the former managing director, or general manager, excuse me, of the LA County Parks and Recreation District. And so my love of public institutions and private institutions is a part of why I'm here, and also because I love Altadena. I'm not saying anything new, but I believe, for the record, it's good to say where are most people's feelings. And mine are that this is a beautiful library that's become much more publicly accessible and interesting in the last few years. And that, just as Michelle has said, is what we see. We can't see the sausage making, nor do we want to. As public participants in your library, we want to know that you as board members can be stewards of the best of this library. I don't know what happened privately with Mindy either. And again, I will repeat that what I see in this library is much better than what I used to see. Bill Tima was wonderful, so I'll say that. So I would also hope, and I believe I've real hope with you, Betsy. I feel that you are a process demon, that we have the kind of process that I have seen encouraged by some of the board members here, and I'm hoping others will begin to move in that direction. I also do want to see respect of women, because it's been very disheartening as a woman who has worked in fields where I have had to shout to be heard, to hear the kind of language directed towards Mindy Kittay as a woman in this time is more than horrifying. So that I appreciate your listening, I appreciate your service, and I also am voting for the partial tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Chloe?
I'm going to talk fast because I have a lot to say. My name is Chloe, and I'm the marketing coordinator here at the library currently. I want to start with a couple things. First, unlike the ex-employees that have recently presented to the board, I have not been asked to speak here, nor do I claim to speak on behalf of the entire staff, present or past. I'm here speaking simply as a current staff member whose voice, like many other current staff, has not been heard in all of these proceedings. I fear that speaking up today to the board puts my job security at risk, a fear that is likely shared by other staff and has perhaps acted as a barrier to them speaking up to the board on their own thoughts on these proceedings. So as an employee who cares deeply about this library and its potential to have a significant positive impact on this community, it has been disheartening to see our director treated as she has been over the past months. I took this job because I felt Mindy's passion for this library, this community, and the vision she had for transforming us from a typical library to an innovative, game-changing source of information and good in the community. How discouraging it has been over the past months to feel the excitement around that vision diminish. Even more disheartening, however, has been the board's lack of transparency with both the community and library staff around their treatment of Mindy and the board's decision-making about her position. These proceedings, the mystery surrounding them, the secrecy, the public chatter, they do affect how we approach our jobs. So whatever happens in today's proceedings, I just have two simple requests. One, I request that the Altadena Library Board of Trustees make a statement from a place of integrity about their reasoning in pushing Mindy out. There is significant incongruence in my eyes between the improved state of the library under Mindy's leadership and the board's insistence upon questioning her character in the public sphere. I request that you communicate. I request that you help us, both the staff and the public to whom you are accountable, to understand. My second request is this. I request that the board consider that the current staff likely have very different experiences from the allegations brought forth by former employees. These issues brought forward by previously Charmaine, Heather, and now I believe her name was Ms. Molina, are completely alien to me, yet never has the board approached me, or as far as I know, other current staff to understand our experience working under Mindy. Again, I request that you communicate and that you show the current staff that you value the validity of our experiences, as well as these past staff who perhaps struggled with the progressive vision that Mindy tried to implement. I speak up today because I care about this library and this community. While I understand there are certain things that legally cannot be shared, I hope that moving forward, the board can mend the district's newly tarnished reputation, and that has been read through the lack of transparency and communication throughout this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do some of the stuff that I do with my kids at school. And I can't make you do it any more than I can make them do it, but trust me, it will feel good. Just take a big, deep breath and blow it out. I'm going to. All right, Carmen.
It's not part of my 3 minutes, but it's going to sound like we wrote our speeches together, so it's but I have to go right after her.
Did you want to use the camera?
No, I made sure. I hope I can tell time because I timed myself, so I'm just going to start. I decided to make public comment as I am no longer afforded the open and friendly dialogue with the trustees that I once had. Unlike others recently, I am standing here of my own accord and have not been asked to speak. I am here only as an individual who thinks and speaks for myself, but will say that there are current staff that share similar sentiments. I will also say that it is unfortunate that an environment has been created in which staff in general are not comfortable expressing how they feel for fear of retaliation, having witnessed what both Mindy and I have been subjected to. The good news is this has recently spurred the reestablishment of the Staff Association, providing an avenue of communication to the board from staff as a unit, and a safe way to express their discontent not only with the board, but with individuals attending board meetings, creating the perception that they speak for and represent how staff feel. It is also unfortunate that due to the director's leave, a previously scheduled meeting with county officials was recently canceled by them, a meeting that was scheduled with the purpose of continuing a discussion for expanded resources and library space for West Altadena, essentially stalling progress on that effort. In 2015, I turned down another job offer to accept a temporary position here at the library. I stayed in limbo as a temporary employee with no benefits for over a year because I truly enjoyed working here and believed in the vision and direction of the district for the community. Though I have not been here long, I I have seen great progress and positive change. I have seen staff empowered with opportunity and voice. I saw staff who are excited and ready for much-needed strategic planning, even with resistance from the board to accept their responsibility in that role. It's no secret that multiple staff members hoped Mindy would return and continue as director so that progress can be put back on track. When I tell them they can come to a board meeting and have a right to make public comment, they express their concern and hesitation in doing so, saying that the board has not expressed interest in hearing from current staff, and that resolving to public comment is sure to have negative consequences for them. Some of those same people most likely believe I have risked my job to stand here, but I felt that for the sake of this district, it is important that I encourage the board to acquire the training you so desperately need, involve staff and our support groups so that everyone is on the same page about their own roles and responsibilities. I believe this is the way to prevent this board's misconduct from continuing and the immense waste of taxpayer funds resulting from that misconduct. Whether or not you choose to do the right thing by resolving your personal issues with the director to continue her employment, more importantly, I suggest you reconcile with current staff and support them in continuing the work and positive progress that has been established these past few years.
Thank you, Pam.
So, Mark Marisco. So again, the idea of item 5, as President Khan said earlier, was really a lot of things that are not on the agenda. So I'm going to start with the things that are not on the agenda. If I have time, I'll do that because I'm actually talking on 6, which most of the things we heard today could have been 6 or 7B. So one, if you didn't know, when Jan spoke, she might have told you that she was here 10 years ago. I think Gwen was on that committee. I was on that committee. Some others in this room were on that committee. 2 of our past presidents, 2 past trustee presidents of the board are in this room. Besides me, I was a past trustee, but we have David Detz, we have Dale back here. You know, because I think we all care about it. So I'll come to that in just a little bit, but I just think it's important to know Jan served as Director of Library Services in the city of Pasadena for a dozen years or something like that. So anyway, I want to just say Taste of Dina is, we got a big crowd here, so Taste of Dina, September 29th, put it on your calendar. Taste of Dina, September 29th here in the library. Summer concert series. So Mike Zoller, this guy back here, is part of the Rotary Club of Altadena, and he's chairing because the Sheriff Support Group could no longer run the event, and we didn't want it canceled, so the Rotary Club of Altadena has stepped up to run it, and so I think it's important people know that it starts on the it's the 8 consecutive Saturdays starting July 7th, so we invite you to be at Farnsworth Park at 7 o'clock for that. The Friends of the Altadena Library gave Ryan a check for $12,000 on Monday when we had our general membership meeting last week. And for those of you that were part of the 56% of the people that voted for Prop 68, I think you should all be proud because hopefully that's going to make a difference in our community. Last thing I want to say into this section is, if it's possible, because you had said earlier that you were going to allow for those people that want to speak on 7 to possibly speak before you go into closed session, can you maybe explain to the audience what item B is really about, because there's not a board report for that, so where it talks about Altadena Library District Director position? Because what I'm hoping for is you might be saying that you're thinking of giving, and again, it's really about the process. I think I've said it here, and Mindy knows this, that I've said this to her. It's not that I'm a strong supporter of Mindy, but I'm a strong supporter of the process. And you know, what Lisa said just a little bit ago, was the importance of the fact that public institutions have processes, and it's very possible after hearing the speakers, because look, Dave Herman, who I really respect as a person for the things that he did when we did the 2014 per parcel, the idea that there are a lot of people that may not, you know, that he has this petition on one side and there could be a petition on the other. So what I'm hoping you might say out of here is you're thinking of giving a contract through the end of February so that the election can go through and that whoever the 5 trustees are can actually make a decision down the road. Thank you.
Mr. Jeremiah, you want to speak to that?
Dale Bronner, Director Kate's attorney again. I want to begin to talk and take more than 3 minutes. I'll discuss the connections and list some other items. Director Kate is being placed on administrative leave. The facts are that Director Kate was on express leave until her doctor released her on May 2nd to come back to work on May 12th. And Director Kate sent that note to Mr. Roy and Trustee Khan, and on the 8th of May, Director Kate received a notification that she had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. And we need to look at where that investigation came from. I circulated, fortunately we had 30 copies, and there are many more people here than that, but I circulated to many people and to the board. When Mr. Higginbottom was speaking, an email from Mr. McDonald to Trustee Zambrano on January 18, 2018. And embedded in it is the following sentence on January 18th by Trustee McDonald saying, "I think we need an attorney to start investigating her," that is Director Kate, "over that issue," and I'll indicate what that issue was, "sharing confidential information, hiring friends as contractors without disclosure, and the sexual harassment issues." We just got this recently. Director Kate never known about it. That intended investigation surreptitiously in chain email deliberation filing the Brown Act back on January 18th was obtained through Public Records Act request. That issue is the issue that Mindy Kate talked about earlier of pay irregularities. And Mr. Zambrano has suggested down the email string that the board hire a forensic accountant in order to prove what had been disproven 3 or 4 times, that there were pay irregularities. So much later, on May 8th, that investigation resurfaces as an excuse to keep Director Kate from coming back to work, and I'll talk more about it in subsequent presentations.
Okay, we have come to the end of the things that I categorized as number 5. Oh, sorry. So we're going to be going into closed session shortly.
May I speak?
Yes, please. I think I had put you in there.
Betsy, I'd like to speak as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Dale Locasella. I am a former president of the Board of Trustees. I was on the board for 8 years. I gave more than 10 years of volunteer service to this library. I was a founding member of the foundation, the Art on Millionaire's Row Art Festival for the 5 years that it lasted. I gave countless hours and endless dollars to this library, and I love this library. I am humiliated by what's going on here. I am so embarrassed that I had a part in getting Mindy this job. I was on the committee, and it's been horrible. It's been horrible. The representations that were made turned out to be inappropriate, not essentially true. Well, I took her around where she interviewed, and she met with every single group of people here in terms of employees. Everybody loved her. They thought she was wonderful. 3 weeks after she sat in the chair, problems started. And they have gone from bad to worse. 2 years ago, I walked away. I gave up everything in this library because I could not deal with it. Not that everything she's done is bad, understand. From a technical standpoint, in the way the library is situated and public capacity, a lot of it's very good. The way she did it, I'm so upset that I can barely speak. The problem is going to come to an ultimate head, and it's going to come very quickly. If this board renews her contract and keeps her here, talk about bullying. I'll sue you if you don't give me my job back. We're going to sue you for this, and we're going to sue you for that. The board has problems. That's not my elephant anymore. When I was on the board, we didn't have these problems. But that's another story. This library, in 2 years tops, is going to belong to the County of Los Angeles. It's going to go bankrupt. It is going to fall apart. They will take it over, and it'll run, and it'll be a library, maybe, if they choose to keep it open, and that'll be fine. But it will be such a huge loss to the community that we'll never make up for it. I've been with this library for years and years and years, and I've watched it. And this is the fall of Rome. It's the end. And I'm so sad to see it happen. Gwen, you're the only one left on the board that was on the board when I was here. You know what I'm talking about. All right, Ray, you know some of it. I just had to say that because I think the ultimate bullying is sitting over here.
Thank you,
I'm sorry.
thank you. So, I was gonna allow anybody who doesn't wanna necessarily wait around till after our closed session to put their comments in this general session. I know Mr. Gatsby wants to do that. Would you like to go next?
Okay.
And then, you know what, let me make it.
Hi, I'm Dave Datz, and I was on the board for 10 years, but I want to talk about something that happened after I left the board, after I retired halfway through 2015. Even though I had left the board and left the library, I remained friends with a lot of the staff, and there were a lot of anecdotes about how the staff was upset, many of them not feeling very good about what was happening since Mindy Kattay took over as director. And so the library hired a psychologist as a consultant to look into this, and the psychologist designed a survey, an employee survey. And the results of the survey were never made public. And so as a member of the public, I took it upon myself to insist that since the public had paid for it, the public should see the results. I received a letter from Director Kattay outlining all the reasons why the results had to be confidential. I met with Director Kattay in her office and another trustee, and Ryan was there, in which I think I successfully rebutted all the arguments in the letter. And at the following board meeting, this was in 2016. I know it sounds like ancient history, but it's important. At the following board meeting, the board, after a lot of discussion and back and forth, decided to make some results public, but the results that were made public, for lack of a better word, I can only call bastardized. They didn't portray how the employees responded at all. The Employee Association at the time recreated the survey and circulated it among themselves with the same questions. Those results were given to the trustees. I don't know if they were relayed to the public, but they definitely showed a very high level of discontent, which indicates to me, sure, there were employees who probably were chafing over some of the changes, but a good manager, and it's the biggest part, the thing that the director does Outreach is good. Mindy's done a good job at that. How she's organized the library, I can't speak to because I'm not a library expert. But managing the staff, at that point, it was a failure. It's interesting to me that I've heard current staffers talk about how good they feel working for Director Katte. If you've been here in 2015 and 16, you would have heard the opposite from employees. I think it was a failure of management, and I do have documentation for what I've described, if anybody wants to see it. Thank you.
We have a lot of requests for public comment on our closed session items. I think we need to stop again for 5 minutes. So it's 6:38. We'll reconvene at 6:43. I've had quite a few people before this meeting do your Wheaties, so I hope you'll eat your Wheaties this morning, so that you have the stamina. I'm just going to roll through the people who asked to speak on item 6, which is our closed session. And by the way, we've decided, just for your comfort, we'll retire upstairs for the closed session so that you can have this room to hang out in as well with on. So, and also, of course, you can be comfortable upstairs if you would rather. So, here we go again. Bridget, I'm going to let you go now.
As I've been sitting here listening to everyone, something Ms. Khan said earlier was the importance of taking a deep breath. I suggest we do that. I think what we're doing here, both as a board and a community, is not petty. It may seem like it's petty egos involved as our tempers flare, as we look at each other, sometimes glaring, sometimes smiling. What you decide tonight is also not about the past, not about past employees, not about past and board members. What it's mostly about, and why I'm so concerned, this is about my grandchildren. It's about what are you going to do to ensure that this library continues to connect with the community in every way, to bring us together, to heal from this point forward, to eat our egos, if that's necessary, in order to ensure that my grandchildren still have a local library to come to. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gronemeyer, I've got you down for both 6A and 6B. If you'd like to do them.
I'd like to separate them.
Separate them? That's
6A
fine.
first.
6A, good, all right.
So 6. So Dale Gronemeyer, Director of Case, attorney again, speaking on 6A, which is the issue of the performance evaluation of Director Katte. And I want to make the board an offer. There's been a lot of cry that the information that's going on behind closed doors ought to be public. Director Katte offers, she's authorized me to offer, that she will waive any privacy rights she has to privacy and confidentiality in a secret board meeting. the purpose of the Brown Act personnel exception to public meetings is to protect employee privacy rights. Director Katte recognizes that she may get disparaged, she may get criticized, she may get attacked, but it ought to be out in public. And it ought to be clear that it is not Director Katte who is preventing the public from hearing the dialogue about her evaluation. If you do not decide to do it publicly, it is you are doing it. You are suppressing it from the public. So that's the offer. I hope you'll take it, because we need to clear the air on this. And Director Katte is not afraid of a public dialogue and charges and accusations or whatever is going on behind closed doors on it. Now, talking about charges, I mentioned that Director McDonald on January 18th made the statement, I think we need an attorney to start investigating her over that issue, the forensic examination issue, sharing confidential information, hiring forensic contractors without disclosure, something related to sexual harassment. In another email that was circulated, Mr. Herman makes the statement in the context of telling you board members you are in a position to stonewall and let the contract run out on her contract, and that you should let her contract expire instead of an investigation. Now, I want to know how Mr. Herman knows that there was an investigation that was advocated by, of Director Katte, that was advocated back in January, and is the basis for the administrative leave that she has been placed on. There is a continuity here of the director having, of the trustee McDonald having resigned right before these emails were produced to us, and an investigation by Mr. Herman refers to, and the administrative leave for the investigation.
Mr. Romeyer, I'm so sorry to cut you off.
But you've always allowed us to finish the sentence.
You're right.
And I wasn't.
But I
Thank you.
Mark Mariscal.
So the 6A, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, the Conference of Legal Counsel, Anticipated Litigation. So again, before you go into closed session, it would be nice if you could say it, and again, it's up to the attorney, but if the Conference of Legal Counsel Anticipated Litigation just has to do with the documents that I think we saw 1 or 2 meetings ago, that was the general, something that starts before a lawsuit, governmental code claim. You know, if you're talking about that, or you're actually, you know, in preparation for you know, what could be litigation, with the idea being that then, you know, when does, and maybe you could say this, either coming out of the closed session, you know, when does the director, so we could be educated, when does the director and officer insurance kick in, and when the special district kick in, depending on what it is, if it's based on any of this. So it'd be nice to know that if that's possible. The other thing is I did ask before you go into closed session under 7 if you might explain what line 7B was going to do, and I don't know if you're going to do that, but you were going to allow us to talk on it. So, you know, just again, I don't know if you had an opportunity to talk about it. If you know what it is that public item is, so we could hear it ahead of time before you go into closed session. Thank you.
We'll do that.
So I'm actually speaking about
community and connection. My name is Roberta H. Martinez, and my family has lived in Pasadena for 35 years. But for the first 15 years of our living here, our family had more interaction with Altadena than Pasadena, because we're practically up the Woodbury. Our children attended St. Mark's School, we attended St. Mark's Church. I worked at St. Mark's as a teacher, and in fact was the teacher of one of your board members, as it happens. Which is a surprise, actually. We were also involved with both Camp Mariposa and the Altadena Library. Our life was up here. I really didn't know much about Pasadena. In the ensuing years, I've had a variety of experiences, including former chair of the Arts Commission for the City of Pasadena and the chair for the Library Commission. I've served on a variety of boards, including the Armory Center for the Arts, and have been a director of Latino Heritage. I'm a historian and a writer. And I share all of that with you, not as puffery, but just to let you know that I've had a little bit of experience in seeing what sorts of efforts can increase and strengthen community connections. In 2015, I was excited to learn that the Altadena Library was a recipient of the competitive Latino Americans 500 Years of History grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the American Library Association. I don't believe the library had ever received a grant of this sort before 2015. In part, they received over $3,000 for public programming. Part of the programming included screenings of the documentary Latino Americans, created and aired on PBS. In addition to the screening, several experts, internationally known experts, came to Altadena to this library, and among them were Dr. David Hayes Bautista and Dr. Francisco Valderrama. There was also a Latino festival, as well as exhibits in partnership with the Altadena Heritage and Altadena Historical Society, and a Latino festival highlighting local culture that was complete with food, music, and literature. I also have to throw in here that as somebody who comes here periodically, this has become a really vibrant place. Often we see sort of the graying of the people that are using institutions, and there's a lot of people that are younger that are here using this place that was so vibrant when it was first starting out, and then seemed to go on a bit of a hiatus as far as an energy level felt. And that vibrancy has returned. Since 2015, as I was saying, this library has had just this, it's felt vibrant. But the gifts that Mindy has brought are valued, have had significant impact on Follow Dale. I'll just finish my sentence. And have revitalized the library and the community it serves. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Monica Hubbard, I believe you want to speak.
Thank you. Trustees, I'm speaking to the section of performance evaluation. Each of us has a distinct personality and a way of being in the world. To use an automobile analogy, it might be a minivan, an electric car, or a luxury sedan. To ask you to be anything else, a truck say, is simply not possible. Similarly, out in the world, each of us has a particular leadership style that includes 3 points on the leadership triangle. We may be focused on the task at hand, on the processes to accomplish the task, or focused on the relationships of our leadership teams and those we interact with. Your style may or may not resonate with everyone on your team, and it's a rare leader who is able to focus on all 3 points of the leadership triangle. But what you hope is that your team will share your vision for making the organization the best it can be and work together in a positive way to achieve mutually agreed upon goals and objectives that are in the best interest of the organization. Speaking for Neighbors Building a Better Altadena, as we observed all the trustee meetings since last September, trying to understand what part of the library's vision and its implementation were eliciting such negativity and toxicity from the certain people on the board. The only thing that we could come up with was that the male trustees didn't like the leadership style style and the manner in which the vision was being implemented. Because when you look at a review of all of the annual reports, and I'm assuming you all have, all these documents are on the website, because a review of the annual reports, the financial statements that have also been reviewed by auditors, the past strategic plans created by staff and community, and approved by trustees, and most recently the Community Conversations Report, all indicate an excellent and well-qualified staff led by a visionary leader has brought this library into the 21st century, and nearly all the goals in that plan have been met or exceeded. A cursory review of the budget book, 17-18, corroborates the impressive stride that the library has made in all areas. Look at the goals that the board approved: funding, outreach, facilities, youth resources, and access to the digital world through state-of-the-art technologies. All of these amazing strides have been made because of vision, a highly skilled and fully credentialed and board-certificated staff, and a public thrilled with the tremendous strides made in the past 3 years. Whether you feel that this library and its incredibly hardworking staff deserves the plaudits they are getting from the public, from outside auditors, from outside consultants, or whether you believe that the library is in dire straits, your course of action seems clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
Jan Sanders, I think you wanted to speak on this one.
Jan Sanders, community activist. I just want to speak for just a minute about the whole process of director evaluation. I have been a library director in 3 different states, not because I couldn't hold down the job, because I moved for promotion. And I've been in public libraries for 45 years, and I've worked with a lot of different boards and a lot of different, based on what I know about that. Best practices for evaluation, particularly of a director, involve a reevaluation of the commonly agreed upon goals and objectives that were set out at the beginning of the calendar year, whatever that looks like. That way, the evaluation can be, it can be clear, it can be driven by statistics and by events that have happened, and does not fall into the realm of anecdotal evidence. Because you're talking about a review of often both complaints and commendations, and so looking at things statistically and looking at things with a clear eye for what actually has occurred and the ways in which the library has moved forward is really what you need to be concerned about. As an incoming library director, I can tell you that there is never a time when the staff really thinks all the changes you're going to make are great. It just doesn't happen. I think that's true of any organization, but as librarians, we tend to be a little staid. We tend to be a little firm in our attitude sometimes. And so I think that setting that aside and not getting too concerned about if everybody is extremely happy with the way things are going and the way in which changes have been made is really not what we're dealing with here. What we're looking at are the statistical representations of how work is done and how the library is progressing and the ways in which the library is becoming, again, that central hub for action and involvement and education with the community in which it serves. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee.
Thank you, Madam President. I put in 2 cards, one each for 6A and 6B. So I hope you'll give me the. Thank you. And I'll start off, I'll just run through.
I'm sorry, you'll do both?
Simultaneously, hopefully it'll give me the 6 minutes if it runs that long. I don't think it will. closed session 6A, public employment performance evaluation. I realized last night, I said, wait a minute. Five board members, two of them are new. Two of them have not seen Director Kate in action. They haven't seen her work. They haven't seen her engage with the community. They have no idea how she works. She's been off on stress leave since January, so you're looking at her work now. So we got 2 out of 5 who have no idea how she works. We have, of the remaining 3, Mr. Zambrano and Mr. Brushatsky. By the way, Mr. Brushatsky, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, you need to leave. You need to leave this board. You need to leave it now. You are a stain on this community. Thank you. 2 of those members of the remaining members, are embroiled in a legal matter regarding violation of the Brown Act that, as we've seen, is going to court on behalf of and the direction of Ms. Kate's attorneys, because it stinks. I mean, there's no way around it. And unfortunately, Ms. McMullins was part of that as well, but did not engage. But there's this big issue, and so you 5, two of whom haven't seen Mindy work, the others of whom are actually facing legal challenges for issues related to what she has found out and then directed against. You're going to vote on what her performance is like. Somehow I'm not expecting a real rip-roaringly positive result from that. Again, how 2 people who have no idea how she works can vote on that, I don't know. How 3 people who are involved in the legal implications, I don't know. Okay, so that's A, light and light, like to say. 2 is conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation. We don't know what this is about. Let's anticipate, though, that it's something to do with Mindy. Why not? Chances are good. Okay, there's a lot of talk, and we've heard talk this evening about how, there might not be a library and all that. The library is insured. I think it's really important that people understand that. Mark earlier mentioned SDRMA and also D&O. There is a risk management association that provides general liability coverage. First 3, thank you. SDRMA provides general liability insurance that would pay out. There's also directors and officers insurance that would pay out. Mark has asked repeatedly for information or suggested that the amount of the deductibles on those policies be raised to members of the public. For whatever reason, that hasn't happened. I think it's really important that folks understand that lawsuits happen and the deductibles get paid, but there's so much money sitting in the coffers, extra money sitting in the coffers, that this library is going to be around basically as long as any of us and far longer. There is not a threat financially to this district as a result of any litigation. There may be, depending on the severity of the claims, there may be some legal challenge for the personal health of those people who sat on this board. But I can't speak to that. But again, really important, people. The library is going to be here. Any legal action is not going to severely impact this library, so don't worry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mindy.
I did I put 70 on there?
No, would you like me to add it?
Yeah, so could I do 6A and 7B together?
We're not going to do 7 until after.
I thought you said you were going to let people talk before.
If you know what, if you want to, we'll call it the open public communication, so let me see. So you want to speak to 6A and B?
No, just
Just
A
oh,
right
just
now.
A. Okay.
And 7B. So I
Okay.
can have 6 minutes.
Okay.
So Renee brings up a good point that some board members here have not worked with me, and we haven't even had a conversation or any experience. And it appears from what I heard tonight that you haven't even spoken with staff. So I'm going to use this 6 minutes to talk to you guys because it's the only chance I've been given. So I'm going to talk about the things that I did do. So, for example, the board handbook that was created over a year and a half ago, which had extensive information about the Brown Act, about the role of the board versus the director. It had everything you could absolutely possibly need in that. There was no handbook prior to that. And I'm going to bounce back and forth because I took a 13-page report that some board members received and tried to combine it into 3 minutes. When I got here, things that I fixed: no lighted exit sign, no panic bars, no required signage. 60% of the lighting in the building was broken. They were looking at a $100,000 contract. I got it for $36,000. Our doors were chained at night, so we had no security in this building. We got those doors replaced with the monies from the HUD grant that the board actually stated in an open meeting they were willing to let go back and not use. The renovation, I don't even want to go into a bunch of details on the renovation, but I think everybody knows about the renovation. Came in under budget. We did 20 additional items. All staff was retained their jobs and worked during the time that we were closed. The only newsletter was a full publication that came out quarterly. We now do a library newsletter, e-blasts that go out to well over 14,000 people. We have a full marketing plan. We market. There was no quiet study room in the library. There's one now. We created a separate office and program for passports, and we've doubled our passport income every year. We started patron-initiated purchases so patrons could determine what they wanted to read. We created a teen room. We created a fab lab. We've replaced all of the technology in this library that was 10, 15 years old. Thank you, Roberta, for the comments on, I won't go into the Latino outreach. The community conversations with the reporting, the 24 meetings, the town hall that's continuing, and every month more and more staff get involved with. That's changed the face of Altadena, not just the library. We didn't have color printing, scanning, or faxing. We had Wi-Fi that was like dial-up, and then now it's, is that 6 minutes?
That's 3, so I hear you.
Okay, good, okay. We have 1G Wi-Fi. The 50th anniversary committee, the grand reopening, the Growing Up Dena, the first fundraiser ever that made substantial money for this library, $14,000. The foundation is growing in leaps and bounds. It now has, I believe, 12 board members, more board members than it's ever had. At the end of the year, on June 30th, 2017, per the draft audited financials, the district's change in net position over the past 3 years was an addition of almost $700,878. This is especially notable because during this time period, the director has made improvements to wages for staff, increased the district's share of funding for employee health insurance, reduced the district's liability for compensated absences, reduced the district's retirement benefit costs by increasing staff contribution for those on the maximum plan, made substantial improvements to facilities, technology, collection, operations, increased open hours by providing regular after-hour programming while increasing capital assets and fund balance. We have a volunteer coordinator, tons of grants. The culture of the library staff has changed. Over 100% of staff, a couple months before I left, said they were satisfied with their job. Over 95% approval rating. They have professional development days now. They present at CLA. On the survey that was created, we took a lot of that information and worked with staff to come up with ideas. How can we communicate better? How can we improve morale? We made implementation teams where staff has control of the changes, the policies, the way that we do things. And we created a leadership team that had like 13 members on it. And that is really conducive to why the culture changed and got better. And there were a lot of people that were negative about change and caused a lot of dysfunction and unhappiness in the library. And when they decided to move on to other jobs or retire, the culture improved tremendously. Board packages were full of misleading information and statistics that were not accurate. The staff members didn't have access to the board package. They have to request it every single month through a legal document. When I started, the month I started dispersing the board package to the Friends, the foundation, the board, the staff, for transparency. I also started creating operating plans that had actual goals related and tying to the strategic plan. So, I mean, there's a lot more that I can say, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Good timing. Mr. Groner, I think you want to come back to 16 for the resolution.
So Director Catay is...
Did you want to say?
Yeah, thank you. Got it right. So Director Catay is going to talk about her wish that we don't litigate. My job as a litigator is to prepare for litigation. And so I want to kind of finish up the dialogue I was having about her administrative leave. And what I've emphasized is, if you go back to January, Trustee McDonald, in an illegal Brown Act chain email meeting, floats this idea of an investigation and says expressly that they want to change the seating so that they can elevate the position of Mr. Roy to the point at which he replaces Director Catay. Then you follow through in March. Dave Herman is talking about the investigation, and then on May 8th, the Trustee Khan justifies keeping Director Catay from coming back to work because of an investigation. There's a straight line. In the document I've distributed, there are a whole bunch of admissions by Director McDonald and, Trustee McDonald and Trustee Brzezinski, that their motivation was, for attacking Director Catay and for the investigation is because they are angry that she blew the whistle on the Brown Act. That's not a good scenario to go to litigation on for this board. That's a very bad scenario. And the administrative leave, Mr. Duran has tried to defend that the board did not have to report that out. We'll fight that issue out. I think it's a Brown Act violation. But I ask you, why haven't you been transparent about why you will not let Director Catay come back to work? And I make the same offer to you. If you want to talk publicly about why you won't let her come back to work and to try to demonstrate that you are not just trying to run out the clock until her contract ends, Director Catay waives any privacy rights, and if you want to talk about that publicly and justify it to the public, you can do so, and she will not challenge that her privacy rights are violated. And if not, you're responsible for the lack of transparency.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Okay.
Are you going to let any go on 7? Because you had said it earlier in the meeting, and that's why I know that. And if not, can I have my 1 minute back on my?
I was just about to ask, because we're, I hope, approaching our closed session time, and it's 7:20. If there's anybody who has already signed up to speak, Gail, I'm just noticing here, so hang on just 1 second, who fears that it would be a hardship for you to stick around until we're done with our closed session, if you would like to speak. So think about that for a second. I'm gonna let Gail Meltzer go because she's speaking about, I believe, sorry, I missed that before.
Hi, my name is Gail Meltzer, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wasn't going to come up and speak, but I'm stepping forward because I didn't expect to hear what I'm hearing, and I'm really perplexed. When you hire a change agent, change happens. In an organization that has operated the same way for decades, when forward movement begins to happen, some staff and volunteers no longer fit. And conversely, new people are needed to join the team who believe in and are excited by the vision of the new leader. This is not only normal, but of course necessary. I am truly confounded about the angry, vituperative comments that are being made here about Director Katay's many achievements, while at the same time acknowledging that what she has accomplished in 3 years is significant, very welcome, and was badly needed. Director Katay may have ruffled some feathers. That's what change agents do. My feeling is, and forgive me, boo-hoo. I am really saddened that this amazing forward momentum could be further compromised. I hope you will dig deep and think carefully in order to make the best decision for our wonderful community. Your decision will have tremendous impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Oh, Karen.
I've only heard you say that about 23 times. Okay, good. Great. This one here? I'm going to keep my head down and talk really fast because I'm just reiterating what I sent to you in a letter, an email, which I hope you saw. But I don't want to run over my time. I believe that your wisest course of action in this moment is to basically 3 things. Resolve outstanding questions, concerns, and criticisms in person, in a civil manner. Use a trusted outside mediator if you need to. Have a potluck. I don't care. I'm with Chloe. Communicate. That's what has broken down, it seems to me. It's a little town. We should be able to communicate a little better here. And it's not too late. Things have gotten muddy, but it's not too late. Second, renew Ms. Katay's contract as director. I recommend for 3 years, which would bring back her visionary leadership and enable her to guide the community through the urgently needed process of updating the library's strategic plan. And third, prepare to move forward with a clean slate among all trustees, as well as Ms. Katay, and I would say too, with the public. Anything short of these steps threatens a loss of public momentum and goodwill for the libraries. It'd be a waste of time to search for a new director with a strong vision and a fundamental understanding of our community when we already have one. A lawsuit or legal settlement would be a waste of finite taxpayer dollars better spent otherwise. And finally, to let Ms. Katay go would be a waste of a good person and the career of a fantastic library director. If you believe she's made mistakes, make an effort to determine if she learned from them. As well, examine your own conscience to determine if the board made mistakes and whether you responsibly as a board member hired, supported, and evaluated the director as well, and whether your responsibility was well and faithfully carried out. And also, as you get around to evaluating, I'd ask you to consider the ALA award nomination that I forwarded to you. I think it's a worthwhile read.
Anyway, Ms. Katay was hired to move our library into the 21st century. She's done so with creativity and commitment that has reverberated throughout Altadena. In the process, she established the library as a vibrant hub of our town, a dream we didn't even know we had. If you believe in redemption and reconciliation, I urge you to put your faith in them now, in this situation. Restore joy, restore joy and high expectations to our beloved library. Bring Ms. Katay back to the job and community she loves. Thanks for your time.
I'm sorry, give me 1 second to start. We've had all the comments, we've heard all the comments that were requested for up to and including item 6 on our agenda.
No.
Sorry.
Mindy put one in.
I'm sorry, did I miss you? You, so sorry, you spoke for 3 minutes twice.
That was 6, 8, and 7. 6, 8, and 7, but I have 60 also. And I'm 6, 8 as well.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, Patricia Miller.
My name is Patricia Cunliffe. I wrote the story, I'm not going to take 3 minutes. I wrote the piece in the Pasadena Weekly, but I am here today as a member of the Altadena community. I've been a member of the Altadena community since 1992, and I use the library. First of all, I want to say that we are all subject to human nature. Some people we like, some people we don't like. Nobody pleases anybody. And as has been said many times this evening, when you come and you make great changes, you're going to ruffle a few feathers. So if everybody has made mistakes, I am just begging you, let's stop the mistakes. The longer we argue and tit for tat and everything else, the only person that's going to win out of this is the attorney. And I trust that we are all here because we love the library and we want what's best for the library. And I would say that it's safe to assume to say that most of us do not like giving attorneys money. So that's my big thing. So I am just saying, I beg you, please. You made a mistake, she made a mistake. Oh, and I want to say one thing about this mistake she made. If she did indeed ruffle feathers when she came in, notice the progress she made in 2 years to turn everything around. In addition, thank you for that list of what you've accomplished, Mindy, because who else is going to have the time to list it all and tell you? So I am begging you, everybody, put everything aside, let it go. On both sides, please, for the sake of the library. We are not, you're all intelligent people here. Let's behave like intelligent, educated people and not like sophomores. Please, put it aside. let her get back to work. And Ms. Kate, I am assuming you will come back to work. I mean, I'm hoping she still wants to be our library director, because I have never seen a better library, except under her leadership. And I am begging you, please, put it all aside, let's get this attorney off the clock, and let's get moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just had another request for items. Sorry, hold on. Mr. Dust. Well, can I just say, when you gave your original thing, I categorized that under 7B, and it seemed,
Wasn't seven. Oh, I see, I know why you did it, now.
so I'm not sure,
6A.
yeah. Hold on.
I'll be brief.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, I was on the committee when we hired Mindy Kittay, and I just want to correct some things for the historical record. I'm not sure how it will affect your decision one way or the other. We didn't hire a change agent. We hired a director. Our director had passed away. We had an interim. We needed somebody to run the library. We had two candidates. She was the better of the two. She stood before us. She stood before the committee and said, because in her previous job there had been a lot of broken china, and she said she realized, she learned her lesson, that she had some ideas for change, and we didn't object to that, but that she had learned her lesson and she would go slowly. She didn't go slowly. That's what she said to us, and she promised that. So, as I say, we hired a director. I had been a manager during my career. If I had 70% of the staff that I was hired to manage leave within 2 years, I would have been ashamed of myself. That's not leadership, that's house cleaning. One more point, and then I'll finish. There's been talk of ruffled feathers. I saw people who were absolutely miserable. Their feathers weren't ruffled, their lives were being ruined. They themselves were under stress. Some of them took stress leave. They became ill because they couldn't stand the work environment here. Now, maybe they were wrong. Maybe Mindy was the only one who was right and all of them were wrong. Maybe the library needed to change and get them out of here in order to do it. But that's not usually the case. Usually, if you have 15 people, well, it wasn't that many, but it was close to 70% of the entire staff leave because they were miserable. That's not leadership. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I know. I gotta say, I'm a little bit, I feel like I'm in a difficult position because we've had, this is what I wanted, and I think we all wanted, lots of comments, lots of perspectives heard. It's stretching our process a little bit, and part of why I've chosen to do that is because I knew we all knew when we started that this was gonna go a long time, which it already has. We're at over 2.5 hours now. And we're about to go in closed session soon, and we don't know how long that's gonna take. And I hate the thought of making you guys all sit around. But we do have items on the agenda after our closed session. And I've allowed people to speak to those items after the closed session. So I think I have to continue to do that, to be fair. Even though it's starting to feel like a marathon. I am gonna ask my attorney though, is that permissible or?
Yes, Madam President, as the presiding officer, you have a fair amount of discretion and leeway as to how the agenda proceeds. If I might, just for your, just to sort of take it up a little bit, if there are people here who are wanting to speak, and or hear the board, and see the board act on item 7A, which is the item related to auditor controller, you could certainly move that item up ahead of your closed session to get it taken care of before the closed session, if you think that might be expedient. You don't have to wait until after the closed session to consider that item now.
That sounds like a good idea to me. That sounds like a good idea. Okay. So, Ryan, can I just ask, will that work for you? If we do 7A and then the closed session? Okay. So, let's just take a pause, and we're gonna do 7A right now. And then we'll take stock where we are after that. So.
Katay has the right to speak. You can't discriminate against her, when you let everybody else speak on 6B.
Madam President?
I should, please.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting to cut off comment on 6B.
Thank you.
But, that can also happen right before you go into closed session.
Okay, I apologize because I did lose track of that. So Rainey, I'm gonna ask you to go ahead and do 6B, and then we'll move to 7B. If you wouldn't mind, do the timer, sure.
I just want to make you all aware that this board, and if you haven't seen it yet, there was an analysis done by HR Network and myself about the amount of staff that left, why they left, and who left, and it's nowhere near 70%. So please make sure that you review that. I tried to return to work on May 12th and was not allowed to and was put on administrative leave in order for there to be an investigation. I welcome an investigation because I'm confident that it will show that there is no illegal or unethical behavior on my part or any reason for me not to be returned to work. Numerous times in the month before I went on leave after absurd and inflammatory accusations from Trustee Brushatsky, I demanded there be investigations into his allegations. These requests were ignored by the board. It's been over a month and I've still not been contacted by any investigator. I've asked the board for mediation over and over again, starting as far back as July 2017, and our HR firm has also asked, and every single request was ignored. I literally begged members of the board via email and in person to help me with the dysfunctional, aggressive, and inappropriate behavior of Trustee Brushatsky. No members of the trustee did anything to assist. In fact, one board member told me that I must not be understanding what Ira was saying. Emails we've received via the Public Records Act show that my fears and anxiety were well-founded. It is very clear that the 3 male members of the board at that time were scheming on how to get rid of me. The trustees forbid me from contacting legal counsel without the president's express approval, so I was unable to express my fear of reprisal for insisting that the board stop violating the Brown Act and receive training to our legal counsel. On August 16th, legal counsel and the library's insurers, after reviewing numerous documents I provided them from Brushatsky, wrote the board and stated that they were recommending an open session board meeting for the purpose of training, education, and setting information flow, and that they felt that it was an urgent enough issue that it should be scheduled within the next few weeks. The board ignored this request and to date still has not received training and education and continues to violate the Brown Act and overstep its role as a board. Our HR firm notified me and the board that they might be treading in dangerous waters to be the go-between for the director and the board, and that they could end up in legal hot water. So I was denied any type of support that any other employee would be afforded in a similar situation and had nowhere to go but to seek outside legal counsel. Even so, I continue to try to bring these issues to resolution by providing over and over again documentation and answers to all the concerns of the trustees. These were mostly ignored, and I had to resort to handing them out at board meetings, re-emailing them, and in the end putting them in the board package so at least the public would have the facts. I continue to request mediation and help, and I warn that this path would lead to legal action. I'm again asking you that you return me to work.
Thank you.
Litigation should not and does
Thank
not
you.
need
I'm
to
so
be
sorry.
how this ends.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Okay. So, what we just decided was to do, item 7A, which is called, to refresh all of our memories, Resolution of the Board of Trustees number 201806 to ask the Auditor Controller of Los Angeles County to prepare the new tax roll. Mark, where are you?
Mark Mariscal. So, David Datt and I, David chaired and I kind of co-chaired the 2004. We saw Dave Herman earlier, 2014. This per parcel is very important, but I want to clarify a couple things on the per parcel. Is that at a previous meeting, a couple of meetings ago, there was a discussion of, yes, one of the reasons we need to get the Bob Lucas open for more hours, maybe on Saturday and Sundays, was because we promised that as part of the per parcel. And I've got to say that the per parcel was really based on keeping the existing services that we had and moving forward from that point of view, and then relooking at all of the different incomes and expenses. Possibly additional services could be done. We heard about a bunch of the additional services with some of the extra dollars that came in over the years from the property tax increases, where they were used, from community conversations, all those things. But I don't want anybody here tonight, and anybody that's going to listen to this, to even think that this item that is going forward tonight is asking that the per parcel have its regular CPI increase going forward, has anything to do with any of the other potential issues that are going on. This is a normal thing that those of us that worked on the 2004 and the 2014 knew we wanted a CPI inflation in there so that it could keep up with the expenses, so that we could keep services, keep buying materials, keep giving raises to employees. This only comes out to about $19,000, the 2.71 over the approximate $700,000 that comes in. But I do want to reiterate then again, where Renee might have said that it seemed that there was some excess monies of what the auditor said. But again, there are so many capital needs that need to be done at the branch, as Armando has talked about, and those of you that have been there to look at it, we know there are needs there and there are needs here. And so even though there's reserves here that exceed the GAN minimum limits that are required, which are somewhere between the 4 to 6 months of cash reserves of your budget, the rest of the money that you guys will talk about somewhere down the road are for improvements here. And so I think it's important that we know that. And so I don't want anybody to think that the board is raising, per parcel property tax because there's these potential litigations or those things. And I know that 95% of the people won't think that, but there are a few people that might say that's the action you're taking tonight, and I know it's not, and I want the public to know it's not, because this is just one of the things to make the library work well, and it's a tool that you have, and it's a tool that we have in order to keep spending. So Renee, we don't have too much in reserve, and when we do figure out how much it is again at the next audit, I hope you look at doing capital. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not too much.
Renee.
Thank you, Madam President. Leave it to Mark to demonstrate that he and I are not joined at the hip. I think it's very important that people understand that, A, this is actually a property tax increase. No matter how you slice it, it's real property, you're taxing it, it's a tax increase if it passes. It is a tax increase that voters back a couple of years ago agreed to have. But it is a tax increase, as Mark said, it's very minor. Mark said it's important that people don't think certain things. I think it's very important, and I don't know how you're going to do this, but it almost looks like you're asking the people of Altadena to reward this board for the, let's just say, craptacular job you've done in handling the various issues that have been discussed earlier tonight. That is not what this is about. This is not about saying the board, showing public enthusiasm and support for what the board has done. This tax is about public enthusiasm and support for the library. And in November, there will be an election where there will be new board members. Potentially, there will be a vast new sweeping change. There could be 80% of this board could be replaced in November. And this is money that will go towards that board, not towards necessarily these individuals here. I don't know how many people showed up tonight because of social media posts talking about a property tax increase, but one way to get people to come out and engage in the community issues is to say taxes. So kudos to those who came out, but I think it's very important, again, that this is not about this board. It's actually about the library and about supporting the library in the future, I think.
Franny, I know you wanted to talk to the taxes. Would you like a microphone?
No, you know what, I'm just fed up, I'm not gonna say nothing, because there's too many lies and he said, she said.
Thank you.
Okay, we're getting close. So, oh, wait, here we are, 7:08, okay. Well, Jonathan's here, I think my microphone might have.
It died?
Okay, so here we are at 7A. Ryan, it's your turn to talk.
Well, Nicole did prepare for us a staff report on this, which is in the board report, and they have seen it in the back. That goes through what this is about. The bottom line, and in the interest of brevity, this was passed in 2014, the Measure A, which goes for 10 years, and I believe there was another measure for 20 years prior to that, which gave the district this percentage of the budget. The bottom line is this is nothing new. We did this last year, we did this the year before, and I've attempted to provide that to everybody in this document. If you see it with the yellow bar, it was 30 copies of it sitting over there, and I provided that with the board as well, just in case anyone was wondering what exactly Measure A was and what the board reports looked like for the past couple of years and what the CPI increases. They were all in this document. You could take a look at that. So what we're attempting to do here is get the library to adopt this resolution that gives the county permission to go ahead and levy this tax for the library for this next fiscal year, 2018-19. And it's virtually identical to the one we passed in 2017 and the one we passed in 2016, except for the CPI increase, which they calculated, and the calculation is actually in here. You can see how they calculated it, and I won't attempt to try to explain that, but for this year it was 3.62%, which I believe, and mathematicians can go behind me and check this, I think it comes out to $1 and change per year for the Altadena residents in the single-family category. But if there's any other questions regarding this and there's still confusion or clarity needed, certainly would like to hear those questions now, and between me and Nicole, hopefully we can answer those.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is read the resolution out loud so everybody knows what it's about. do a motion to accept it, and then we'll have discussion, and then if there are any more questions, we can answer them. So, bear with me. Resolution of the Board of Trustees number 201806 of the Altadena Library District to ask Auditor Controller of Los Angeles County to prepare new tax roll for account number 57.12, Altadena Library District tax. Whereas the Altadena Library District has undergone severe revenue reductions requiring cuts in staff, services, hours, and materials purchases, and whereas the state of California eliminated the Special District Augmentation Fund in June 1993, and the district relied on those funds for 1/3 of its budget, and whereas the state of California transferred 10% of the library district's property tax revenue to the schools of California for fiscal years 1992, 1993, and 1993-1994, and whereas there was a need to replace lost revenue to maintain good library service, and whereas the library district, the Altadena Library District called for a per parcel election to tax owners of real property in the district for library services, November 14th, 2014, and whereas the Altadena Library District has complied with all laws pertaining to the per parcel levy, and whereas the election was won with 10,113 voters voting yes, and 1,712 voting no, representing an 85.52% yes vote. And whereas there is a cost of living clause after the 2016-17 fiscal year, resolved that the Altadena Library asks the Los Angeles County Auditor Controller to prepare the new tax roll for account number 57.12, Altadena Library tax for billing of direct charges for fiscal year 2018-19, and to increase each parcel by 3.62%, dated June 25th, 2018, Board of Library Trustees. Do we need to make it today's date?
Yes, we'll need to change that.
Okay.
Yeah, black.
So, I am going to ask for a motion to accept this resolution. And once we've gone through that, we can have discussion. So, can anyone move that? Gwen moves. Can I have a second, please? Terry seconds. Okay. Now we can have any discussion among the board. Anybody need to know anything about this? Okay.
It's my understanding that about 35% of the population of Altadena lives in the northwest part of Altadena, which is served by the Bob Lucas Library. But that population, while they pay their fair share of taxes, I don't believe get a fair representation of services at the Bob Lucas branch. So in the last 3 years, in the last 3 budgets, they don't get the same events that are happening at this library. And that library has not been meaningfully upgraded like this library has. And so to ask that part of the community to continue to pay taxes and not potentially get the same kind of services, I just can't in good conscience, rely on that or say we're going to do that. But the biggest thing is it's not open on weekends when children and families could actually use that library. Our surrounding communities are open on Saturdays and even Sundays. They have libraries open, but the Bob Lucas branch is still closed on Saturdays. So I think it's a concern. I think in the future, perhaps, but right now, there hasn't. For the last 3 years, Bob Lucas has been basically ignored. There's been great improvements at this branch, at this library, but the branch has been ignored, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's discussion.
I just have a question, I guess. And that would be if there's a provision or a way to, when these chunks of income come in, if there's a way to divert them to a certain branch of the library, or is it all holding and spending is decided upon with the administration?
We have a lot of leeway in terms of how we spend the money in creation of the budget. And so there are certain line items in our budget that specifically mention that branch, and then the one that's coming to mind is the programming. But in terms of capital improvements, that line item is for the district, and there is a lot of leeway in how we spend our capital improvement line item.
And those are changes that we can make.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
So I want to make sure I understand. The voters voted for this overwhelmingly. The provisions of adding a CPI increase every year were written into the original measure. And so every year, now including this year, this is a routine process that we go through to fulfill the original request or the original measure.
That's right, and that'll be true through 2025. And leading up to that year, we will need to start another campaign to make the public aware that this will have to go back on the ballot and be revoted for. So this is something we'll see again next year in the U.S.
Okay. I'm just going to ask if anybody here has any other questions about it, just so we're all clear what we're doing. Granny?
For the past 2 years, 3 years, I've been coming here to see what was gonna happen with Bob Lucas Branch, especially in memory of Roberta. And as far as,
Granny, can you wait till we get your microphone so people can hear? Here it comes. Thank you, Carmen.
for the past, 2 to 3 years, I've been coming here specifically because of Roberta. How do you know Roberta Lauderdale passed away? That was her library. And every time something's done, it's always done here. So unless you guys really are sincere about helping the West Side and the Bob Lucas Branch, this is just a farce. You got a new garden here, you got new bookshelves here. Sure, you did cosmetic stuff. The one thing you did at that library that you haven't done here was made it more ADA accessible, especially the restrooms and to get in and out. But other than that, you haven't done anything to make it pretty, to make it, open for the kids. A lot of people who live on that side don't even know what happens because they don't have a way to get here. They got too many kids or not, and they work all week. So I really would like you to sincerely promise that whatever money comes in, you think about Roberta and that library. Thank you.
Thank you, Granny.
I have a question. My question is for Armando. Armando, I don't understand your confusion. If you read all the board packages, if you talk to the branch manager, if you talk to Ryan, many, many things have been done to that branch, way more than what Granny referred to. You are well aware of that. You are also well aware that I was trying very hard to get a better and larger facility that would accommodate more programming and to look at our budget to determine how we can open up for Saturday hours. And your implication that for 3 years I have not cared or done nothing for that branch is outrageous. Anybody can read any of the board packages and know that all of that is untrue. You can listen to the board meetings. I have spoken up multiple times. And I would like to understand how it is that you feel that you can sit there and make these allegations that you know are untrue.
Thank you. I'm going to bring us back to the motion on the table, unless Armando, you want to... Okay. So we have a routine resolution to pass about something that was decided years ago. What we're hearing from Ryan is that we, because of Terry's question, have leeway in how we budget the funds that will come into the library from all the sources that it comes into. So I think the question of the Bob Lucas Branch is a pertinent one. I think we all care about it, and I don't think it needs to be necessarily confused with the issue we have in front of us, which is to accept this routine thing that we do every year. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote on this motion to accept this resolution, unless anybody else has questions. Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? No opposers, thank you, that passes.
And just a note that, this was originally planned to go in the next meeting, which is why it's June 25th of the original meeting. So we're gonna get that changed, and by the time we resume from the closed session, we'll have a clean copy for the board to sign.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, just. Okay, we need to take a brief break. So it's 7:58, we're gonna resume at 8:03 and then figure out what we're gonna do after that. All right, we have two more comments, about 7B, which is the only item that's left after the closed session. So I'm going to go ahead and allow those comments now so that we've done all of our public commenting and we can go to closed session, and if you guys want to stick around, you're welcome to, and if you don't, you certainly don't have to. So.
You know what, I changed my mind.
Okay, I'm going to, thank you. Okay. Renee, 7, is Renee here?
She's being interviewed by the newspaper.
Which newspaper?
Okay.
New York Times.
Well.
We made it to the.
Feels good to laugh. Okay, Mr. Brownmeyer, 7B, I think you're up.
Well, I have no idea what 7B is about. Is there a staff report or something? I mean, there's inadequate notifications when you make any comments and a black box. What's it about? If you're gonna have a discussion on something, I wanna wait until after I know what you're talking about in order to comment.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. And Madam President, I hear you call my name, I was.
Yes, I'm sorry, I just let somebody go ahead of you since he's here. Would you
Sure.
like to go now?
Actually, if I might follow with, Mr. Gronemeyer here, because I have no idea either.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess that leaves you, Brandon.
Okay. I just have one thing to say.
Okay, let's get your microphone.
Did, Glenn leave, or is she?
She's still here.
Okay.
Thank you for noticing that, Brandon. She needed to make a call, so.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you're on.
No.
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure, that you're gonna talk about, performance evaluation, and I guess that means that that'll determine whether or not you renew a contract. And I realize after listening to everybody, that everybody has their own opinion. I have mine. I'll keep most of this to myself because I don't want to argue, because this isn't the place for arguing, this is the place to get a solution. My concern, which was brought up, is that there's two new members of the board who really don't know the director or how she has performed or not performed. So my hope is that if you are thinking of renewing her contract, not to do it for 3 years, to just kind of wait and learn more about who she is and really talk to people other than the people who come to every single meeting. Talk to people on the west side. Talk to staff and let them know, old staff, new staff, not to be afraid to tell you how they really feel. And after all of that, then talk to her and let her give her side. But I just think just the same people come to this meeting all the time. So I think it'd be important that you hear from other people before you make a decision that's gonna put someone in place for another 3 years, especially for the new people, and, because they don't really know. That was my suggestion. I'm not even gonna go into the other stuff. That was it.
Thank you, Greg.
Madam President, I apologize for not being there. I consult with you very soon.
Yes.
I'm sorry, folks. I'm not gonna use a timer.
Okay.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you for letting me intrude or interrupt. I was sitting there thinking about Mr. Gronemeyer's and Mr. Amy's comment about the black box, and since I was the one who asked that this item be placed on the agenda, I thought I would, for their benefit as well as the board's, explain my rationale so that you can decide if you want to speak now, before the board comes back and starts their conversation. So, everyone sees what's on the closed session agenda. It's clear that Ms. Katay's performance evaluation will happen. I put the item at 7B so that the board would have some leeway to have a discussion and take some action if what happens in the closed session results in the desire by the board to take some action with respect to Ms. Katay's position with her contract, with her performance evaluation, or anything else. So 7B really relates to giving the board some leeway and some room to act tonight if it turns out from the closed session that they feel the need to do so. So I hope that's enough for the two of you to now comment if you need to.
If I may, I would like to.
Please. Thank you, William.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. Real quickly, there was comment earlier from someone who may have left about Mindy's last job and the ruffled feathers or whatever. I think all of you know, but I'm not sure you do, that Mindy's last job was as librarian of the county of Mendocino. Mindy discovered that the Board of Supervisors in Mendocino County was screwing over the library system up there. And she tried to get them to stop screwing over financially the library system up there. And they refused to do so. And Mindy, you know, some people, you just can't beat them down enough. Mindy went to the county grand jury and said, hey, County Board of Supervisors is screwing over the library district and refuses to stop. And, as you can find online, the county grand jury issued a report absolutely positively agreeing with her and saying that the county needed to change its evil ways. Now, Mindy lost her job because, look at her, you know, some people you just can't beat down enough and they don't learn. So, County of Mendocino hired a new librarian. And the following year, the grand jury up there did another report. And they said, the county Board of Supervisors is still screwing over the library system financially. And, what a surprise, that library director quit. And then another library director was hired and quit. And I'm not sure if they're up to 5 since Mindy left, but it's basically been a revolving door up there. What does that mean? It means that you can decide that you don't want Mindy here anymore because she's ruffled some feathers or she's made too much change or she can't get along with a board that keeps breaking the law despite what she says. But that's not going to change things because you can hire umpteen different librarians if you want to over the course of time, but eventually things like grand juries are going to catch up with you. People with integrity are going to quit saying, I can't work with a board that won't follow the law and understand its responsibilities. And this library district could wind up like that up in Mendocino County where the revolving door just spins. And the problem with that is you got plenty of money, we got money, but you're spending the public goodwill faster than you can accumulate it. And that is a horrible thing to do. So again, sure, you can hire a new librarian and get another one in another 6 months thereafter, or 9 months, or whatever it takes. It takes a heck of a lot of chutzpah to stand up to what was going on here. So please take that into consideration.
And thank Mr. Rubin for the clarification. I'm sorry.
Were you going to take your 3 minutes, sir?
No, I do appreciate the clarification. That leads me to want to reserve the right to perhaps respond, perhaps not, after you come back and report and take up item 7.
If I may, Madam President, so the Brown Act requires the board to hear from the public on a listed item on the agenda prior to or during the consideration at your discretion. So, all due respect to Mr. Gronemeyer, if you want to speak to item 7B, and this is the time when you determine that the board will hear on item 7B, either speak now or potentially forfeit that right depending on your willingness.
And I would say that would be very unfair because I said that even though the black box is justifiable, I don't know what's in it. It's unfair to ask me to have to respond to something that's going to be on the agenda later. And I don't know what it is. But, you know, if you want to take that position, Mr. Duran seems to think you have the right to do it. I don't think you do.
I think
I'm going to be smart.
I think I'm going to go with my attorney. So, if you would like to speak to 7B, I think now's the time, sir.
I can't speak to a black box.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I just got a request from Michelle.
I just wanted to speak very briefly about what happened in Ukiah because I have some personal information about that. A very good friend of mine who is from Altadena, we were a few years ago talking about the library, and she said, "You're going to get our great librarian who we lost because she was a whistleblower." I just wanted to, and I said, "You're kidding." It just seemed like such a strange coincidence, you know, that my dear friend from high school, she said, "Oh, she was making all these improvements, but she got in trouble because she spoke truth to power."
Thank you, Michelle. All right. I think we're ready to go into closed session. I apologize for the hour. We've been here 3 hours and 20 minutes, and we are not done. So you are welcome to stay. I don't know how long it's going to be. You're welcome to stay in this room. I'm not sure if we go past, are we already past closing time? No. 9 o'clock. So closing time is 9 o'clock. If we go past that time, I guess you can wait in the lobby.
You can wait down
You
here,
can
but
wait in
not
this
on the top
room.
floor.
Okay.
Leave and then come back if it's after 9? Will we not be able to get back in the building?
We can leave these doors open and drop Jonathan's he'll take care of it.
Okay, so, yes, you can go have something to eat and come back. Okay, so we are,
Do you have any requests for carry out?
Yeah.
I think somebody's on that, thank you, Richard. So I'm adjourning us into closed session, adjourning our open session at 8:20, and we'll see you later. We're back at 10:42. I'm gonna ask Ruben to report out for us, please.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Board of Trustees, and thank you those of you who stayed around waiting. I'm going to take the closed session items out of order a little bit, so I will report on the significant exposure litigation item that's listed on your agenda, and say that the board received a briefing from legal counsel, but did not take any reportable action on that item. We did provide direction to legal counsel. On the first item, the public employee performance evaluation, on a motion by Trustee McMullins, seconded by Trustee Andrews, the board voted to direct my office to prepare a contract extension for Mr. Tay from the date of expiration, which is June 30th, for 90 days. The vote was 4 in favor, 0 against, 1 abstaining, that being trustee Brzezowski. So Mr. Gronemeyer, I will contact you in the next day or two with that document for your review and your client signature. And that's all I have to report, Madam President.
Thank you. I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Item 7B? 7B?
If I may, Madam President, so the board will not consider item 7B, as I just reported, the reportable action already.
That wasn't a closed session item, however. So if you're not going to address it, are you going to remove it from the agenda? There's been no motion to pull it, so it's on the agenda.
Sure, go ahead and make a motion to move it, that's fine.
Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion to remove item 7B from our agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Gwen has moved and Terry has seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Now I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Gwen moves. Armando will second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you so much for your fortitude. Good night.